Loud. It's faster. Hello, everybody. We're going to start our monthly meeting. How's that sound? I'm going to share my screen. And where's the little button that says share screen? Advanced share screen. And I want to share.
Do I have to be there to help you with everything?
Yeah. Would you come over here, Lance, please? Can you guys see? Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
That was Tracy, not Lance.
Oh, was that Tracy?
Yeah, my voice is lower than Lance's.
But oh, so much more important. Ooh, I'm sorry, Lance. I shouldn't have said that. Monthly numbers. We've changed the format. You can see my screen, yes?
Yep.
Somebody?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
See my mouse moving around?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see these three blue stripes up here?
Yes.
Yep.
When you print this out, unless you've typed something in there, they won't be blue. They're going to be gray, just like the background. These spots are so when I send you the PDF, if you want your name, your email address, your website, whatever you want to type in those are for you to personalize it so that you can give this to the public. If you have any problems with that, see Kenya or Tracy. They know how to do it. Right, Tracy? Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah, okay, whatever. So what I set these numbers up was to compare two things, to the previous month and to the same month last year. So if we look at the median sales price, it's down 2% from the previous month, and it's down 1.6% from December last year. Means that the overall prices are trending down some if you look at last year. Closed sales, we're down 3.6 from November. We're also down 3% from December of last year. Continuous days of market. Well, they've increased since last month by 14%, but they're down from the previous December by 2%. I think you're kind of catching the drift. The three things I want to make a point here is our active inventory. We have less inventory now by 13% than last month. That's actually a decent number, I think, but we're up 13% from a year ago. So we've got some inventory to show people. And by the way, if you want to jump in and say, here's what the numbers mean to me, please do. I like that our pendings are up from last year. Last September, October, November, you go through December, January, they were really bad months for us as a company. It's good to me to see we have pendings overall climbing. Now, this is MLS wide, but that trend's easier to watch than us as a company. Still, they're down from November. November wasn't, so that's why December was such a bad month, and November wasn't a very good month. So I'm glad to see they're starting to climb. This is a new graph I put in this year. It talks about what percentage of each price range is represented in our overall sales. Not surprisingly, the lower price end gets most of the sales. 15% is the 2 to 250 and so on. Any questions about the front page?
No.
No.
No. No questions.
Okay, let's go to the back page. This is broken down more by price range. And I've got some more history on it. So if you look at new construction right now for all the active inventory on the ground, on an average, it would take 7 months to sell what we have right now. Now, that's not always true because new homes do a little bit different things and the inventory can go fast all of a sudden. But as a theory, it would take 7 months to sell it all. That's in the red. in the yellow means we're kind of a balanced 5 months and 4 months for 500 and 600 and 600 and over. And we're doing really well. It's still a seller's market in all the other price ranges. Although when you start getting in the 300, 400, it's getting closer to a balanced market. So it's not quite as bad. Days on market, dollar per square foot, and the percentage of list price it's sold for. And then finally, this graph is to give you an overall impression of what's active, the green bars, what's pending, the blue bars, and what's sold. And as you can tell, you can look at the pendings and compare month to month. You can see what the trends are doing. And we're starting to see some actives come down. And overall, if you look at month to month, our pendings and sold are basically the same. Any questions on this page? I didn't think there'd be. I thought everybody was here to see what I wanted to show them on this one. Can you see this slide that says Financial Crimes Network?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in a what seems to be a relatively quiet announcement, though they claimed they announced to everybody last September, the Financial Enforcement Crimes Network has come out with a new reporting form that affects a whole lot of people in this company, or a whole lot of your clients, or it has affected you in the past and you don't know it's going to affect you now. So I wanted to brief everybody on what this was, because the fines are stiff. Granted, the fines for most of you wouldn't start until the end of this year, but it's a $500 a day fine with up to a $10,000 and 2 years in prison additional fine. So that's why we're covering this. Somebody say something?
Appreciate it.
Hello? Okay.
Nope.
So who does this concern? Well, an LLC, foreign or domestic, that does business in the United States. That would be all of you. Corporations that are not publicly traded. So if you're in a publicly traded LLC or corporation, you're not involved. Both sole and partnership entities. If you have less than 20 full-time employees, all of you, if you have developed an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC as part of your business plan, you probably have less than 20 full-time employees. Indeed, I'm an LLC and I only have 3 full-time employees because everybody else is subcontract labor. They can be active or an inactive corporation. There are some rules we'll talk about in a minute, but perhaps you were part of a corporation several years ago that's no longer active. You may still need to report this. It will be corporations formed in the past or corporations going in the future. We'll talk about that. And let's take some of the corporations you may work with. Jay Russell is a developer, for instance. Each one of his subdivisions is normally its own LLC or corporation. He's got all those that he has to fill out. There are lots of exemptions, and we'll talk about it, but you may have clients that also have LLCs, be it an auction company, be it a moving company, be it a somebody who would remodel. So that's why I was including this for everybody in the company, not just those who have corporations themselves, but also your clients.
Greg?
Question?
So looking at that list, it's basically, this applies to everybody that does business in America.
Up to a point. If
Well,
you're
it
a
said
large corp,
It said sole proprietorships and partnerships, as well as LLCs. Who is not covered by this?
Well,
Politicians?
interesting you brought that up, because
I'm an interesting guy.
this is the exemption short title list, and there are 23 exemptions. If you issue securities, a governmental authority, that would be your politicians, Tim. Banks and credit unions aren't affected. Depository institutions, money services business, broker or dealer in securities, and so on. You can read the list there. Insurance companies, state insurance companies, accounting firms, commodities, public utilities, financial markets, pooled investment, tax exempt entities. That means you're a corporation for the music instruments, Tim. They're exempt. Entities assisting in tax exempt entities. And large operating company means you have more than 20 employees. What I can tell you from what I read down this list, from what I know of everybody in this company, if you are running a business of some sort, be it a real estate agent, auction, remodel, your company is not exempt unless you got a lot of employees, except for Tim's business doing the music instruments. But down at the bottom, this one that's called inactive entity is one you all could be affected by. So we're going to highlight that one, and we're going to talk about what they consider an inactive entity. This is very complex, guys. To be an inactive entity, all 6 of these must be effective on your entity. So if your entity was in existence before 1 January 2020, and all of these other apply, you're not active, you're not owned by a foreign person, there's been no funds go in and out, then you are truly inactive. But here's the deal. What if you were in an LLC 10 January 2020, and yet you still don't have any of these other things going on? They don't consider you inactive. You have to report. Did that sink in? Does everybody understand?
For now.
Yeah, but report what?
We're going to get there. Trying to tell you who does and who doesn't, then we're going to get to the reporting.
Can hardly wait.
Huh? Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. And it's a great question. If the entity was in existence before 1 January, you don't have to report. If it was formed afterwards, you must report. Basically, to answer Tim's question, the United States government wants to make sure that nobody is laundering money. Either a foreign entity or somebody in town that's doing drugs or whatever illegal activity you're doing.
Greg.
So the federal government has decided that they want to know everybody in your LLC who is a beneficiary of the money that you run through that LLC or S Corp or C Corp. Was there another question? Okay. So how do you decide when your company was formalized? Well, that's the date that your company receives a notice of creation or the Secretary of State provides notice. To give you a little background here, almost everybody who's formed an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC has done so through our Secretary of State. That's how you get to be able to get a federal ID number and have a official corporation.
Greg, it's Dixie. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So what if you do not, which I do, I'm just asking a question here. What if you do not have an LLC or an S Corp and you're just selling real estate as a real estate agent?
You're not affected.
So I just need to cancel my LLC. And then I don't have to worry about it?
Well, you're going to find that it's not while the fines are heavy, what you're doing is not that hard. So it's just more of, I want to make sure everybody's aware. Entities that meet no exemption and were formed before the 1st of January this year have until the 1st of January 2025 to report who your beneficial individuals are. Thank you, Tim, for reminding me of that. Entities are being formed this year until the end of this year have 90 days to report who they are. So let's say you have an investor that's decided to make an LLC so that he can have rental property. He's only got three employees, and he's forming it this year. It would be nice for you to let him know that he has 90 days to do this. And why are you letting him know? Because lawyers and accountants don't really need to do anything about this. They say this is all self-reporting. So if that's true, they need somebody smart enough like us to tell them what the government's not making very obvious. However, starting next year, each of these entities will only have 30 days to report. So if you look at the scenario, starting next year, I decide I want to have an entity to make rental property. I'm going to start buying them up as an LLC to protect myself. I form a LLC in the state of Kansas starting January 10th next year. I have 30 days to report to the United States government who all the beneficiaries of that LLC are. And yes, I'm going to talk about what a beneficiary is in just a minute. I thought maybe working forward towards who has to report and when is going to be easier than going backwards. I could have been wrong. After your initial reporting, this is very important. Typically, you'll never need to report again. You'll make one report and you'll be done. And the government is going to believe that whoever you tell them is going to be a beneficiary of your company is going to stay that way. However, if there's a change in the beneficiary ownership, so let's say Chris and Brenda decide to make Morgan part owner of their company. They have to report that change to the federal government, as well as their annual report to the state. Or if you made errors on your first report, you can correct them. If you dissolve or terminate your company, you have to let the feds know. And if there's a change in the legal status, and here's where it gets tricky. In the next screen, I believe, you will see that not the next screen. They consider a CEO, a CFO, COO as beneficiary of your company, even if they don't own anything else.
I haven't had any issues. Okay. I mean, it's so crunchy that it gives it a little bit of traction.
Okay.
Hello?
We say,
Somebody's talking? So let me go back and say that again. Let us say that I fire Tracy. You're welcome, Tracy. And
Thank you. Can I go home now?
no, and hire in a new Tracy. Because she's operating as the CEO or the COO of our company. And how do they define that? We'll get to that in a minute. I have to report to the federal government that I have a new COO. The beneficiary isn't just an owner. We will get to that, but it's change in the structure or legal status. Can I file a master report? Well, let's go back to Mr. J. Russell. let's say J. Russell LLC owns all of these other LLCs. Can he file one master report that covers them all? Nope. Each LLC has to file their own report.
Greg, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So in the filing of these reports, does each member of the LLC, corporation, or S Corp have to file individually, or can one file for everyone?
One person files for the entire corporation.
Does it have to be a specific person, like the president or treasurer or janitor?
Not that I've read.
Okay.
But it seems to me logical that they ought to have some sort of control over the company to file it.
Okay,
So let's say,
so like for instance, me, Brenda, and Kim, we all own the Knopfler Group together. So one of us can file for all three of us.
exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Let's take my company. Tracy's my COO. She could file for my company even though she's not owner, because she has substantial control over that. And we'll talk about the control in just a second. But it's important to remember, and I'm going to use Michelle for this, she's got several different business companies. She can't file one report for each of them and say they're all the same. She has to file a separate report for each company. Okay?
So basically what you're saying is, for example, investors that create an LLC for each individual property they purchase, they have to file for every one of those LLCs?
If that's the way they do it, yes. If they have
Okay.
all the properties under one LLC, they don't have to file it individually. But every time there's
Gotcha.
a new entity created, yes, you have to file a new report. Did I answer that okay?
Yes.
So Greg,
Yes.
all we've talked about so far is ownership of companies.
Yep.
We haven't talked anything about transactions. This is just-
Transactions have nothing to do with this.
okay.
This is, I own a C Corp, I own an LLC, I run an LLC. This is not to do with a transaction that you would write as a real estate agent. Make sense?
Right. Right.
But a lot of agents run their company as a LLC or an S Corp.
Or
And they-
sole proprietorship if we're 1099.
Well, sole proprietorship is not a registered company with the state. To do that as a sole proprietor, you have to register with the state to get an S Corp, LLC, and so on. You're an independent contractor selling properties. And that you can do because you don't have a company. You can do that as an individual. Many people form companies because it helps protect their assets. And it also has some other tax benefits that they may or may not want to do. Some people don't. They run as a 1099 independent contractor, not in an organization. This doesn't affect you directly. Okay?
Greg,
Yes?
Dixie again. So if I have an LLC and an S Corp, do I have to do it twice?
Yep.
Quick question. What
Yeah.
about trust?
Trusts are not
if it's owned in a
Trusts are not corporations. They are not registered with the Secretary of State as a corporation.
What if an LLC is in a trust?
If an LLC is in a trust, that LLC has to register. And I don't pretend to know everything about this. We're going to be covering enough to tell you where you're going to go at the end of the day. But no, if the LLC is a member of the trust, they have to file as an LLC, but they are not, the trust itself is not a company.
Okay.
So how do you decide who a beneficial owner is, which is what we're reporting? Who are the beneficial owners of the companies that we are involved with? You exercise substantial control, or you own or control at least 25% of the company. Which seems a bit of an odd number to me. So let's take the Noffert, for example. Each one of them have 33% of the company. Well, they above that 25% threshold. What if they had 5 members and each one had 20%? Well, then theoretically, none of them would have to report, except who controls the company? Who exercises control over what the company is? And so we have to decide what it means to exercise control over the company. Someone who exercises substantial control: president, CEO, CFO, COO. Anyone who has the authority to appoint or remove a senior officer. So let's go back to the Noffert team. I like picking on them. Let's say that Chris is considered the managing partner. As the managing partner, he can add or remove partners. Therefore, he exercises that control, and he is considered someone who would benefit from the company. So if you have 20 people in your LLC, you have 2 employees. Who's the managing partner? The managing partner exercises control. I know we're getting really deep on some of this, and I know it's because some of you will have questions, but I want you to think about not only what you do, but what your clients do. Authority to appoint or remove a senior officer: decision maker. Someone who can enter into contracts on behalf of the LLC is a decision maker, therefore they're a beneficial individual. So all of this comes down to, and where this have heard the most of, is a FinCEN form. And that's what Tim was asking earlier. Why are we trying to decide when, and why are we trying to decide who? Well, the federal government has come up with a branch of the let's see, enforcement people that are going to register these corporations using a form called a FinCEN. And the FinCEN form, when you first apply for it, you have the choice, and I did, to ask for an individual number, so that from now on, going forward, I will have a number instead of filling out all my personal information again. As a reporting member, I filled out a form online, which I'm going to give you more information on in just a few minutes. It took me all of about 1.5 minutes. One thing I had to have for this, which I'll get to in a minute, you have to have some way to make sure that all your unique members, you've identified them in some fashion as belonging in the United States. So if Kim was going to register the Noffert group, for example, she has to have the company information. If I've got a federal ID number, what the address is, and so on. Then I have to have a copy of the ID for each person who's considered a beneficial owner. So on the Noffert group example, Kim, Brenda, and Chris are all partial owners of this company. Kim has to upload a driver's license or a state ID or a tribal ID if they're Native Americans that are not expired for each beneficial owner of that company. I want to say that again to make sure we understand. Dixie has an LLC, I believe. If Dixie is the only member, she has to have her driver's license. If Dixie's husband is also a member, she has to have his driver's license, because it would be 50-50. If you have an LLC let's not use it. Let's go back to Michelle. She has a partner. She has a partnership with Esther. They have another partner that helps with remodeling at homes. Assuming that they are all beneficial individuals, she'll need the ID for each of the three of them to upload to the federal government. I can see Tim going, crap, I don't want to do anything with the feds.
Hey, Greg,
Yes, sir.
is this legal? Was this, I mean, this doesn't sound,
Well, let's say
uploading IDs is a really spooky thing. I don't know that we can be compelled to do that.
well, I'll let you challenge the federal government. I'm not going to.
I will. I
Can I jump
currently
in
am.
here? Hey, Greg, let me just
Yep.
jump in real quick. So Brenda and I just got done last week with an hour-long meeting with our CPA regarding this and taxes and other yucky stuff. And to answer Tim's question specifically, yeah, everybody has the same question. What the heck is going on with uploading all this personal data and blah, 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 you know, on a separate form in a separate place. But the CPA's answer was, if you don't do it, you're going to get fined $500 a day. And also right now, a lot of CPAs and a lot of lawyers are not wanting to do it, even if they are members of a company or corporation with you. They won't do it as their CPA or lawyer function because they don't want to take on the liability of uploading and putting things in wrong. So talk to your CPA on that stuff. Sorry.
That's okay. Because let me go back to, the most simplistic form. Sandra, I believe, has an S corp. Is that right, Sandra?
She's sleeping.
Hello, Sandra.
Yes, I do. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. Sandra has an S corp. She's probably the only individual in her S corp. She is
Actually, that's
registered.
incorrect. So my mind is going because I never took my ex-husband off because my accountant said at the time, well, it's just more paperwork and stuff. So obviously I need to do that now.
Well, not only that, but every year you do an annual report where you report who has percentage of your business. You do that with the minutes and you take them off. It's really simple. It doesn't take long, but it is a step that is important. The idea is, to answer Tim, I have, and I'm going to use Chinese for a minute, so please don't let me insult anybody. Read a story this morning that there is now an influx of China people trying to get into America to the tune of 31,000 this year, which is greater than the normal average of 1,500 a year.
Wow.
If they come into the country and they're camped outside of San Francisco with a suitcase full of money and they want to launder it, they find somebody with a corporation, they run it through there and they get their money back. They are a beneficiary of that corporation. The feds are trying to make sure that money's not getting laundered. And therein lies the deepest part of this. Who is laundering money and not properly taking care of it, reporting it, and doing the things they ought to? So back to Sandra, who's just got the one member. She fills it out once and she'll probably never have to do it again. Let's say in the meantime, her and Lance form a team and they hire 3 buyer agents. Well, then they may want to use Sandra's S corp to expand the team, and she will need to update and report those kind of things. Does that kind of make sense as to why we're discussing this? Okay. So when you make the report, sorry.
Who can go
Somebody have a
first?
question?
Other words, the government doesn't want competition.
Well, I'm not going to make a decision on why here. They believe there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that are doing improper things. We'll leave it there.
Well, they're letting them in illegally.
And
So-
as And as Chris had to say, it's not whether I like it or not, or whether I think it's legal or not. It's that they can find me a lot of money. And I'll show you that in a minute.
Greg, let me
So-
ask this question though, but so if we have a cash buyer, and so we're gonna have to start asking questions of that cash buyer, because since we're dealing with them, we're associating with them to buy a house, and if they turn out to be a money launderer for the Chinese Communist Party, then suddenly we're in the jackpot too.
Nope. Okay.
That in that title?
That's title. And they want to see the money aged, and they have their own rules. This is about our rules of a corporation. And you don't need to advise anybody on the corporation in terms of legality or do investigation. You may have clients that have LLCs or S Corps or C Corps to do things like buy houses, run a rental company, and so on. And it's worthwhile knowing a little bit about this to tell them where to go. And second, you want to know about it for your own corporation if you're in a corporation. And even more, if you used to be in a corporation, you want to know about it. Now, I've given you kind of just literally if you saw the information sheet that says, do you have to file, and went down all the checklists, you would say, holy crap, I'm going to spend an hour and a half just trying to decipher all this. What I was trying to do here was to give you a brief overview. And what I've determined is if you are in an LLC or an S Corp that doesn't meet one of those exemptions, you might as well go ahead and fill out the form. And if you have other members in with you, find out who's the controller, the manager, whatever, CEO, have them fill out the form. But I'm not going to leave it there because you want to decide what to do on your own. This first website, fincen.gov/BOI. That's going to have every link that you really need, including a link to this small business and how to file it. If you want to know how to find these forms and information without remembering this, FinCEN BOI, and you will come up with a government link that says, go here and we'll tell you everything you need to know. It's got, do I have to file? Am I affected? How often I have to update? Blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to give you an overview to look at it. I will say that don't just go BOI because that's a Bank of India and you'll spend a lot of time looking in India websites instead of finding the forms that you want. If you're not personally in an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp or a Corp, and you have never been, you can probably ignore most of this, unless you have a client doing work out of their LLC. It's just friendly advice. You don't want to get fined $500 a day. Go find your FinCEN and get it done. But here, and to answer of Tim's question, why? I'm going to let you all read that.
So Greg, it's making us, okay, like me, I got nothing, and I like it that way, right?
Yep.
But if one of my clients, it could be a upright American, it could be otherwise, but if one of them is like, was say Hunter Biden, you know, who's doing suspicious things, but I didn't advise him, you know, to walk the straight path, then suddenly I'm being fined $500 a day since the day we shook hands. so it's making me responsible for enforcing this law on
No,
Joe Biden.
Nope,
Or
no.
Donald
not at
Trump.
all.
I've shook his hand.
You're going,
This
You're
says
going
a
down a rabbit
person who willfully violates. This doesn't say if I fail to advise somebody. Any advice you give your clients is, hey, if you've not done your BOI yet, you might want to think about it. That's just being friendly advice. That is not being legal or liable or anything else.
Well, yeah, but like everything else in real estate, we better have a form for them to sign off on to say, Tim Wellicky advised me today that, you know, since I have a something, whatever, LLC, that I better get registered to protect Tim Wellicky.
Nope, nowhere in this form or this law or this act does it say someone else is liable for your actions to do this. And it's not part of the Real Estate Act, which says we have liabilities. So the reason I'm telling you this for your clients is, let's take your music instrument business for a moment.
Okay.
Somebody might say, hey, have you filed your BOI? Because, you know, you're a corporation. And Tim would go, well, wait a minute. I don't know anything about that. Well, now you do, Tim. It is a nonprofit organization registered as such. This doesn't affect you at all. So you can ignore it now. You've been informed a little bit. That's all I'm doing here.
I have a quick question for you. Maybe you said this. If we are working with LLCs, S corps, whatever, as clients, whether they be buyers or sellers, can if they're not doing the right thing, I'm talking about the clients, are we at risk for working with them?
No way in what? No, no, and no.
Perfect.
The only thing that you would have to do with an LLC would come down to the title company, and that would say this entity is buying property, and they go and look at that property at the LLC, and they say it's expired. You're going to have to do something else. That isn't on you. That is on them, and that has to do with are they still filed with the state as an entity? Any other questions? Yes, I'm recording this. I'm looking back at what's going on.
I got
Yes,
your back
I will
on
send.
that. I got your back on that.
Yes, we will. Yes, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel shortly. And I threw out a whole bunch of information really fast. It took me a while to gather it all, but the bottom line is, for 90% of you, or 99% of you, if you have an S Corp or a C Corp and it is active, you might as well go to this site and fill it out, because you don't want to get the fine, and you want to do it before the end of the year. If your management or ownership changes, you need to report it. If you decide to fold the LLC, you need to report it. Oh gosh, I'm sorry guys, my phone's going on. And it's kind of nice to know for your clients who decide to form an LLC every time they buy a new property, as Lynn suggested. Other than that, this doesn't need to get real deep. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, then.
Let's do the drawing.
Then I'm going to end the recording. Oh, I got to stop the share before I end the recording. Sorry.